I'm Bill Vales, and I'm here today with Tom Vales, also known as Dr. Electricity. And Tom's quite an interesting guy. He works at Suffolk University. And Tom, what do you do at Suffolk University?
I'm the laboratory coordinator for electrical engineering department. I teach labs and I take care of the labs, help the students with projects.
Okay, so you're on the staff at Suffolk.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom's going to show us today that science, and in particular electricity, can be fun. Tom has quite a collection of devices here that he's going to demonstrate for us and talk about electrical concepts. And if it's anything like previous shows that we've done, it should be shocking, to say the least. Tommy, one of the first things I have to ask you is, what is electricity?
It's the flow of electrons, a subatomic particle that orbits the nucleus of an atom and travels through wires.
Okay, so the picture we have, and I was never as good in science as you, but the picture I have as a kid was we have an atom with the nucleus, the protons and neutrons in there, yep. And we've got electrons yep. flowing around them. So those are the electrons you're talking
right.
about. Okay, how fast do those electrons move?
Electrons can go in a vacuum up to the speed of light. In a copper conductor, maybe 2 centimeters per second.
Okay, quite a difference.
Yep, quite a difference.
Quite a difference. And I think some of those concepts will probably come out a little more as we talk about these devices.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we start over here and tell us what you got.
Well, this is a device that was made in 1915, back when electricity was new. Everybody was making things to do all sorts of things or experimenting with it. It was gadget happy, like a lot of Americans are. This is a cigar lighter made by the Midland cigar lighter company. And this would have been found in general stores, bars, smoke shops, drugstores, mm-hmm. As something for the patrons to light their cigar. And I'll demonstrate it and then explain how it works. This is the fuel cylinder here. This is the actuating tab that the customer would push down. Yep. Okay. He pushes down, a spark would jump across here, and it would light the wick. I'll do that once more. You can see the... Now, how did it do this? It was powered by some batteries, approximately 4.5 volts. And this is the casing of one of the batteries that would have been found in this lighter. The old Eveready number 6 dry cell, 1.5 volts. I used to buy these when I was a kid for like 69 cents a piece. Today they're over $20.
I can remember these with the, is Eveready still a company?
You know, I'd like to say yes, but the way things happen nowadays, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But just to give the viewing audience a peek here, you notice that this object I have my finger on, that's the coil that makes the high voltage so that the spark will jump.
And you'll notice I'm not going to put my finger on it.
It tickles. I've had it happen a few times, but nothing I want to repeat.
So about when this was made?
1915.
Okay, so about 100 years ago. So people were trying to make use of this newfound phenomena, electricity.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Trying to, okay. Okay, so what do you have here?
And this is another cigar lighter.
Okay.
This one is maybe a little bit newer than this, but not by a whole lot. This was made by the W.O. Hickok Company. Now, I checked on the web. They are still in business. They are not making cigar lighters anymore. But I tried to do some research on it and came up dry.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, the cases of these, are these original?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to note that these cases, these look like oak.
Yep.
They're works of art.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Well, when they made
beautiful
things,
corners,
yeah,
miters, they really look nice. Are these brass here?
yeah, yeah. When they made things back then, they really didn't skimp on quality. The biggest drawback to these is this was nickel plated originally, and they didn't really have nickel plating down as well as we do today. So a lot of times you will see corrosion, you may even see it flaking off. But I can get them replated because I restore these, and they come out really nice.
Now, when you say corrosion, that's not rust.
Right, that's not rust. This is like, how can I put it? Chemical action
Yep.
on this, whether it be the stuff on your hands, or who knows, or just the surrounding, well, in a cigar shop, I'll bet this thing was surrounded by cigar smoke, so.
Sure, sure. A lot of people touching it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of oils on your hand. Okay, so
Well,
this
one-
looks a little different.
Yeah, this one does not have a high voltage spark. It uses a very hot spark that I'll show you. I don't know if it will light. I didn't bring enough lighter fluid, but if I bring this out, you see that spark? Well, that's what normally would light the wick.
I see, similar to, I
Yeah.
see.
Only they're doing this in a little different way. Inside here are some batteries, and there is a coil. So here comes a little bit of theory. The coil is an iron core about this long, maybe ½ inch in diameter, wound with several layers of magnet wire. That is hooked up to the batteries and to this switch here. And what happens is this. As you bring this out and it creates a circuit, current is now flowing in the inductor. And when you break it, you notice that spark. It's a principle called inductive kickback. And all it means is that when you disconnect an inductor, a coil, from a DC circuit, it does not want that to happen. So what it does is it takes its stored energy and makes the spark.
Okay. Now, when you say, did you say conductive wire or inductive wire? You used some term to describe the wire.
Oh, a magnet wire.
Oh, magnet wire, that's what you used. Is that copper?
Yep.
Okay.
Copper covered with a type of shellac or varnish or coating.
Okay.
That's,
Okay. All right. So people 100 years ago, they're probably working on all different types of devices to make use of electricity. These were some,
Yep.
and it looks like there's others here.
Yep.
What do we have here?
One little bit of trivia.
Okay.
Anybody who has ever watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, twice during the movie he goes into the general store to make a wish. And he walks over to the counter and you can sort of see this thing, and he slaps his hand down and there's a flash of light. It's one of these.
Interesting.
It's not this one per se, but it's one of those.
Interesting.
If you were a youngster back in 1910,
Okay. Again, a little over 100 years ago.
yep, you might be given one of these things for a Christmas present. And what these are is these are motors made by the Midco company, okay? And the patent date is 1910.
Okay.
There's 3 sizes of motors. They all are the same mechanically and electrically. It's just that they are different sizes. They all work the same way.
Is it fair to say that the size of the motor would be indicative of how much work you need to have the motor do?
Well, yeah,
Larger motor,
larger motor, more power.
more power.
Now,
Okay.
each motor has, you notice these 2 cylinders here. Those are electromagnets. Now, electromagnetism, or magnetism, and electricity are very closely related. If you have a wire that is carrying an electric current, you have a rotating magnetic field around the wire. That's universal, that doesn't change. You have no current, you have no magnetic field, no current. So, you take an iron core, it has to be magnetic, and you wrap many turns of wire around it. Now, when you pass an electric current through this coil, you have the magnetic field rotating around all of these wires, and what it does is it concentrates itself in the core and makes it magnetized. Like they pick up scrap in a scrapyard. One of those things they use, that's an electromagnet. So
the magnetism is only present as long as a current is running through it.
that's right, that's right.
Turn the current off,
No magnetism.
no magnetism. You see, I was listening there.
All right, we're going to get one. So anyway, if you were a youngster and you wanted one of these for Christmas, it's quite possible you'd get one. Or you'd find these in universities and schools for demonstration purposes, for different experiments.
Great teaching devices. In fact, you probably use these today for teaching.
Yes, yeah. Most of my teaching equipment is 100 years old. Now, let's get this going. This lever here controls the direction of the motor and the speed of the motor.
So, that means without rewiring anything, you can alter the direction of that motor.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, I'll see if I can make it go. It's a little finicky adjustment.
It's only 100 years old.
It's going pretty faster now.
It is going quick.
Yep. Now we'll bring this up here. And it will slow down and should start and go in the opposite direction.
Okay. Whoop.
So that's a neat little toy. You know, I'd love to get one of those for Christmas.
Well, you probably will. So I can see in here a spark.
Yep.
What's going on there?
Okay. Remember I mentioned over here
Yep.
in that coil that a direct current circuit does not like, that has a coil in it, does not like to be broken. What you're seeing there is the little spark that happens when the circuit is broken to those coils.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as, come on.
These devices, they're
There we go.
they're really neat, and they're very well done.
Yeah, cast iron base.
I mean, they're just nice to look at.
Yep, yes they are. I
And again,
collect.
the wood bases are beautifully done.
Yeah, there's that one going. And now we'll go over to this little guy. And he really moves.
Wow. Now, this is going faster. Let's see if I can put this together. This is going faster. They're all using the same amount
Right.
of current.
Yeah, no. There's different currents dependent on the resistance in the circuit.
Okay.
And there would be different amounts of resistance.
All right.
That's one reason.
Okay.
The other reason is the smaller one
Smaller.
can go faster because it's got less, it has
Lighter?
less lighter, yeah, less pull needed to turn the.
I see.
But these were made by Midco,
Okay.
and I've got many of these at home. They're all over eBay, and you can luck out, but most times they're going to cost a few dollars, but they're extremely well made. I dare say that if you had a DVD player today, in 100 years, you're not going to have the DVD player anymore.
So these you use today as teaching
Yep.
tools?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
what do you have here? Well, I'm not going to touch anything.
Oh,
What do you have here?
well, that's another motor. This is probably around the same time.
About 100 years ago?
Yeah, about that.
This tends to have a look that it's a little more heavy-duty.
Yeah.
A little more beefed up.
Oh, it is. This is like what you would see in a factory on a larger scale.
Okay. Okay. And there's a pulley here that
Yeah.
presumably you could put a belt on that to drive.
Yeah. This is
Something.
this is a toy.
Okay.
You might not think it's a toy, but if you look at how they did the winding on the rotor, and they have the brushes, somebody spent some serious time.
Yeah,
You know, making that.
So when you wind these, how do you know how many windings to do?
That's all figured out before it happens.
Okay.
And then it takes somebody with a gift to be able to wind one of those rotors by hand. It really does.
Yeah. But if you wound it 1,000 times, it would act a certain way. If you wound it more times or less times, it would act differently?
It could have a different speed.
Okay.
Now here's something that this motor does that's kind of unusual.
All right.
If you watch the direction of the motor, okay?
Okay, I think the pulley's going clockwise.
When I shut it off, yeah, it's going this way.
Yeah, clockwise.
Now, if I go and I reverse the polarity,
Okay.
what do you think the motor's going to do?
Well, you're throwing me a softball, but it's probably not going to, I'm going to say it should reverse. And you're going to say
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Right. Right. Saw that coming.
That's a motor that it's called a Shuntwound motor. And all that means is that the field coil here is wound across the brushes. And when you do that, it doesn't reverse direction. It's just the way it is.
So on this motor here, if you reverse,
Goes the same direction.
same direction.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, is this similar
Yes.
to that? Okay, that's another
This is another one of these little motors.
really neat.
Yep, but somebody see
Well built.
what they had to do in those days if you wanted to get around patent restrictions. You had to make a change.
Yep.
And sometimes, in this case, what they did was, instead of having the armatures here in front of the magnet, on this one, the armature is on the back of the magnet.
Oh, I see.
It's going to do the same thing, yeah.
And on these, the
yep.
armature is here.
Yep. And then this one is a little bit fussy. I hope it decides to work. Yeah. Instead of having that camshaft here, what it does is it bears against these brushes,
I see. I see.
but it needs to be adjusted. There we go. Come on. Well, you know.
So it's interesting to note here on the shaft that goes through this wheel, and that's called, is that a,
Just the, crankshaft.
okay. And this wheel, is that called the flywheel?
Yep.
Okay, so the shaft that goes through there, it's not a straight shaft. It
Right.
has
There's a bump.
a bump in it.
Which acts as a cam,
Okay.
and it makes connection with these brushes.
Okay.
Incidentally, the flywheel on these motors has the same importance as the flywheel on your car. It gives it inertia so that it will keep rotating.
Okay.
And, because you're making and breaking a circuit here.
Yep.
And if you didn't have the flywheel, the motor would not run, or it would not run well.
Okay. Now, if you altered the bump,
That would alter, if you put the bump in a different place, the motor might not run, because the bump that hits this is in sync with this bump. So if you move one to the other, the motor might not run.
Okay. How about if I made this bump, if I,
Made it larger?
yeah, made it larger or made it smaller, would it alter the speed of this or the amount of work that this could do?
It could offer, it could change just the speed, the operation of the motor.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
all right.
What is this contraption?
Oh, this is something.
What do you call it?
It is it's a dual armature counter-rotating motor.
Okay, so what are the armatures? What?
These are the armatures here, this one and this one.
Okay. So when was this built?
I got that idea out of looking through on the web a historical instrument collection. Now, I don't recall if it was MIT, Cornell, Yale, or what, but there was this picture of this dual armature motor, and I thought that'd be kind of cool if I could make it. Now, a lot of these historic instrument collections save things that students who went on to be famous, they'd have them and display them. But you can't always count on them working correctly, okay? You know?
Well, that's experimentation.
Yep. So about 1850, the original was made. So I worked for this thing on and off for maybe a year until I got it to where I wanted it. Now you might say, well, what is its purpose? Strictly, it's instrumentation. It's experimentation, rather. It's just building something to see if it can do something.
Explore concepts.
Yeah, just, you know, might look a
Test.
little fanciful.
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere in the world there's a use for a counter rotating armature motor, but
So you built this device
Yep.
and the platform.
no, the platform I did not
Okay.
do, but I built everything else.
Okay. And this clearly has the same level of workmanship as these other devices and the same level of whimsy.
Yeah, oh yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, this is very whimsical.
Okay. Fire this baby up.
Okay. Now you can see, let me stop it.
So the top's moving counterclockwise
Yeah,
and the bottom's moving
clockwise.
clockwise.
it's a very neat device. Might not have a lot of practical applications, but it was fun sorting out some of the engineering problems.
Sure, sure. And often solutions are developed that don't quite have a problem yet.
Right.
You know, I mean, that happens a lot in
Well, you try
science.
building a model of something that's 100 years old with no documentation, no plans, no blueprints. It's, you know, wicked difficult. This started out as a prototype.
So you used your magnet wire
Yep,
here.
yep.
And how did you figure out how many times to wind this? Was that trial and error?
Yeah, it was, I believe what I did was I said, well, we want about 4 layers. So I wound 4 layers.
Yeah, and then you tried that.
Tried that and it worked. So
Really, first time?
that worked, but there were other problems.
Yeah.
Problems with the amount of mass in this lower assembly versus the amount of mass in the upper assembly are not equal.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay.
They're not equal at all, and that's why I have a buffer up here. It puts a little friction on that shaft. No, it's great for, you know, this is something else that I can bring into a classroom and I can show the students and say, look, this may not have practical application, but if nothing else, it should get you thinking.
Now, you've provided these demos at at various audiences. What would the range of audience be in terms of age and in terms of educational level?
Third grade to college level. 30 students to 400 students.
Okay, so quite a...
Yeah, I did that for 20 some odd years, going to all over.
Okay. So you do these at some of the local universities?
Mostly now I do them at Suffolk.
Okay. Okay. What do you have here? This is...
Yeah, you can push that over. This,
yeah, I don't know.
this is a...
Last time I tried that on a previous show, I got shocked.
That's true. Well, we can...
Okay, what do we have here?
This is a motor that was made or brought to life by a gentleman in Mendocino, California, over 20 years ago. Hence its name, the Mendocino Motor.
So that's fairly recent, 20 years
Yeah,
ago?
20 years.
Okay.
It floats, if you notice when I hit this, it floats on magnetic bearings. These magnets here and this magnet, these magnets here and this magnet. So the only friction that exists on this motor is on the point on the glass and air friction. That's it.
Okay, this is truly suspended here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This motor will get up to about, well, 2,000 RPM in full sun. I didn't think they'd go that fast, but I actually took a strobe attack out one day and I measured it.
How did you measure it?
With a strobe light, a strobe attack.
And how does that work?
Basically, you have a circuit that flashes a very bright light.
Yeah.
And it's a calibrated circuit that tells you how many times per second or minute that this light is flashing. And then what you have to do is you have to look at the image, because you can get a single image, a dual image, a triple image, depending on where you are. So, you know.
So I noticed here when this started, it was bouncing a little bit, but now this has really smoothed out.
Initially, well, number one, let me say, these things are very difficult to balance, okay? There's a limited amount of area for the balance weights, and, you know, you basically do the best you can. I like to try to balance them so that they are up balanced while they're running. But as they speed up and speed down, you basically have what they call lobes, which are just areas where it's not quite in balance yet.
Yeah, so it gets kind of elliptical.
Yep.
So this looks straight as an arrow to my eye right now.
Yep.
You know, how many RPM would you guess that to be running at?
Well, now, oh, I don't know. Maybe it's hard to, yeah.
Now, is the glass here as a ornamentation?
No,
Or is that serving
the glass serves as a bearing point for the pivot on the end of the shaft. And people ask, well, why'd you use a mirror? Well, I tried using plain glass, and it just looked wrong. The mirror just gives you a little bit of zip. The arrow, the shaft there, that comes from a hunting arrow shaft.
Oh.
It's extremely tough, extremely straight. Radio Shack magnets, solar cells from a guy I found on the web. I've been building these kits and plans books for 20 years.
So people buy these plans and kits, and they build these. What a great project for anyone.
I donated a kit to an inner city child that his mentor got a hold of me and sent back pictures of him at the science fair with his motor running. I've had people from 7 to 70 plus build these things, and I've sold them on every continent in the world to some pretty unusual people.
Okay, interesting. This is quite a collection of apparatus, and they're really fun to look at, fun to operate. I would think that you could have a ball building these things, and it lets you experiment with various concepts.
This is just a starting point. Okay, you could make it with a bigger rotor, you could have bigger magnets, you could make it longer. It's just like I tell a lot of the people, it's a starting point. Get you thinking. And that's what we need to do today, is get kids thinking.
So is there any practical application for this?
Teaching tool.
Okay.
Teaching tool.
But certainly we see concepts of levitation being used in like trains.
Yep, that's right. There's levitation. There is solar energy. There is what they call DC motor theory, because you have the solar cells, and each pair of solar cells that are opposite to each other are tied to one coil. So that when you're sitting there and light hits this, it puts a current in this coil. That current, remember, magnetic field around a current carrying conductor, reacts with this magnet. This is the field magnet, and it moves at 90 degrees, and the process starts all over again. So you have, you know, magnetic motor theory, solar energy, coil winding, and in fact, you really need to have a little bit of due diligence when you build this thing, because this thing is not a toy. It's more of an instrument.
Interesting. Well, okay. Very interesting. Well, I know this is just a snapshot at some of the things that you have. It certainly demonstrates that sciences can be fun.
It's a lot of work.
And certainly stretch one's mind. I want to thank you for bringing this stuff in, and I know we have some other neat stuff that we're going to look at in another show, but thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.